Okay, the Manhattan Project. Okay, this is probably the greatest achievement of humans in the 20th century. All right, and there were 100,000 scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project to build the nuclear bomb. Same concept where they believe that they were creating eternal peace on Earth, heaven on Earth, and that's why they worked so hard. And guess what? They were right? Because now with the atomic bomb, nations are afraid to go to war. Before the atomic bomb, World War I, World War II killed tens of millions of people. And even though there's still wars, they're not as devastating as before. Okay? All right, so this idea of bringing heaven to earth, it goes way back to the beginning of humanity. This is Göbekli Tepe. It was first built in 9600 BCE. And this is considered the world's first temple. It's the first temple that we discovered. We can assume that wherever humans go, they will build temples. Because, as I mentioned last class, humans are first and foremost religious. They express themselves through, they express their religion through art, architecture, music, dance, okay? And it's an amazing achievement because these pillars, okay, they're really tall. So we don't know how they were able to move these pillars into place. Okay, you can see how small people are and how big this is. But if you think about what we said about having a vision and then working together to achieve this vision, then it makes more sense. Okay, so let's discuss how they were able to build Göbekli Tepe. And this process is important for us to understand because it repeats itself throughout human history. Okay, so let's go over the process. Okay, the first is that there's always a charismatic leader. It could be a man, it could be a woman, but he or she has a vision for creating a temple, a place of God. Okay, that's what a temple is. It's a place for God to live on earth. And he shares this vision with everyone, and everyone works hard to achieve this vision. Okay, but then the leader dies, and now you have different people competing to be the new leader. Okay, why? Because a temple, and it's really important for you guys to remember, a temple is always the most valuable real estate on earth. Okay? If you are in a temple, people come to pray to you, right? So they have to give you gifts, they have to give you tribute. So what's happening in this time is that they would organize a religious festival once or twice a year. And people would have to bring gazelle, had to bring food as a tribute to the priests, and then they would celebrate it together, and then they would feast, okay? So if you're able to control this temple, you lived a very good life. You were a very powerful person, okay? And so when the first leader died, you would have a succession crisis, and they would vote who the next leader would be. And so what happened is they would have these trials where they prove to each other who the gods favored. Okay, so it's possible maybe there are two hills. Okay, you stand on one hill, I stand on another hill, and we'll see where the bird lands. If the bird lands on my hill, then the gods favor me. Okay, because at this time, humanity believed that the mother goddess ruled over all. Because as humans at this time, you're concerned about two things, right? You're first concerned about farming, agriculture, fertility, and then you're concerned about having babies, okay? So that's why the mother goddess was important, because the mother goddess provided fertility for everyone, okay? But then over time, what they realized is, you know what? We can just cheat, okay? And how do you cheat? You cheat by forming secret societies, okay? By getting people to follow you, and then you swear blood oaths to each other, and you also maybe have sex with each other, and you become a faction, okay? And this led to a lot of political conflict. And the way they often settle this dispute or debate is through human sacrifice, okay? So if your faction lost, you'd all be sacrificed. And we know this because under Göbekli Tepe, there are tombs, okay, of human remains. So we assume that these people lost a power struggle, and as such, they were all sacrificed together, okay? So in other words, power struggle, political conflict, religious dispute, human sacrifice, secret society, they go all the way back to human society, okay? All right, so this is Göbekli Tepe today. Again, you can get on a plane, fly to Turkey, and then go visit Göbekli Tepe. Now, one thing that's really important for us to understand is that with our architecture, there's mythology in place, okay? And here we assume the mythology is the mother goddess, with a bird in the sky, and this might be a human skull, okay? So there's a very complex, diverse mythology in place. We don't know what it is, okay? But they had a sophisticated mythology. And also, remember, humans are diverse. So once the mythology becomes established, new people come to establish a competing mythology, okay? So this place is called Karen Tepe. And as you can see, the mythology of this place, it's different. But these places are very close to each other. Okay, so this is maybe the cult of the skull. And the idea here is when people die, you can still communicate with them in the spirit world if you have their skull, okay? Almost the skull becomes a portal into the afterworld. Okay, so you can draw on their wisdom, you can draw on their spirit with the skull. And this called the skull, we see this in many ancient cultures, including in China. Okay? It's what we call ancestor worship. And as you can see, this is the cult of the skull. Okay, the Tower of Jericho. The Tower of Jericho is another settlement. And we just assume that, okay, if it's a tower, it's for defensive purposes. Okay? It's to ward off invaders. But there's actually a much better explanation for the Tower of Jericho. It's a religious temple. Why? Because during the solar equinox, the sun hovers above the temple, and it causes the temple to flood this area with shadow. Okay? So if you are a religious person, you feel as though heaven is coming to you directly. Okay? So you have a ritual, you have a celebration when the solar eclipse happens, and you can feel as though you're ascending to heaven, or heaven is coming down to you. Okay, that's the Tower of Jericho. Okay, Karak Hoyak. Karak Hoyak is one of the first settlements that we found. Remember, Göbekli Tepe is just a temple. So they would go there maybe once or twice a year for a religious celebration, but then they would leave. Okay, Karak Hoyak is where they decided to settle down permanently for decades. Now, in school, you're taught that we started farming because it allowed us to access more food. And so we could grow the population, we would become healthier and stronger, okay? But if you actually dig up bodies of hunter-gatherers as opposed to farmers, what you will realize is, one, hunter-gatherers are taller, a lot taller than farmers. Hunter-gatherers are stronger, live longer, healthier. They have better teeth. Why? Because if you're a farmer, if you're a hunter-gatherer, you have access to lots of different food, right? Meat. And getting the food is actually pretty easy, okay? You can just pick food off a tree. As a farmer, you have to work really hard to grow food that's not very nutritious. And often the food is just similar, okay? You're just eating one vegetable, one crop, okay? It's a very limited diet. And also, because of starch, your teeth gets really rotten really fast. Okay? Also, because you're living together in a close quarters, it's really easy for diseases to spread. Okay? So it's hard for us to appreciate this, but being a hunter-gatherer, it's an easy, happy, healthy life. Being a farmer sucks. So the question then is, why did they become farmers? For religious purposes, right? So that they could settle down and be with their religion. Okay? Be with a charismatic leader. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. So this is Karahoik. This is the religion of the mother goddess. Okay? And accompanying the mother goddess is the bull. Okay? Because if you think about it, a woman cannot give birth by herself. She needs a male. And this male god is the bull, who represents virility, energy, strength. Okay? So they worship both. And you can see how people are worshiping the bull. This is an image of Karakoyak. It's a very sophisticated community. It's also very egalitarian. And each house is a temple unto itself. Okay? So they have these paintings in order to bring in the energy of their gods that they worship. And that's why they want to stay here, because they want to be with their gods, even though it meant a harder life for them. Okay? This is Karakoyak. As you can see, it's beautiful. This is what it looks like today, okay? All right. this is another image rendition of Katakoyak. Okay, as you can see, each house is a temple onto itself. And they bury the dead underneath. Okay? So they're trying to practice a religion, like here. Okay, as I mentioned, each house is a temple onto itself. And as you can see how each house is elaborately decorated with, the bowl, with ornaments to their gods and to the religion. This is a gazelle, so they hunt gazelle for food. But as you can see, it's really a dance, right? So they're hunting the gazelle, but they see it more as a dance, as a celebration. And the reason why is, at this time in history, we feel an obligation to the animals we killed. We have to thank the animals that we killed. We have to celebrate the animals we killed in order to maintain balance and harmony in the world. Okay, it's almost like a contract. Before you can kill animals, you need to pray to the gods and ask for permission. After you kill the animals, you must thank the animals for sacrificing their bodies to you so you can eat. Okay? All right, you guys got it? All right. So let's go over the pattern of human settlements, okay? And I need you guys to remember how this process works. So let's look at how Katakoyak came together, and I'll explain to you why it fell apart. Again, you have a charismatic leader who has a messianic vision. He takes us to this place and says, this is where the gods are. This is divine place. And let's settle down here. And as such, we can bring heaven to earth. And then they become a creative, artistic community, okay? And they often choose a place where the climate is very nice. And that allows them to farm, to supplement their hunt and gather, okay? And over time, as the population grows, they become much more dependent on farming, okay? So it's a gradual process. It doesn't happen overnight. In the early days, there's lots of social mobility in that all leaders are elected. And also, it's very egalitarian, okay? Does that make sense? But over time, the system breaks down. What happens? Well, first thing that happens is because of overpopulation, there's too much stress on the environment, and so you have the land, you're not able to grow as much on the land. Then you have climate change happening as well, okay? Another big issue is that the hierarchy becomes hereditary. Before, the leaders were elected. Now, they are just inherited, okay? And this leads to corruption, where the elite bully and exploit everyone else. And people forget the memories of the first days. And so what do? People just get up and they leave, okay? You understand? You can always choose to leave. And so if you don't like the community anymore, you and your family just get up and you go to another place to build a new community based on your principles, okay? All right, so based on today's lecture, I want you to remember 3 things about how we humans come together in a community, okay? And these 3 basic principles are almost like laws. I want you to remember them, and then these laws will help you better understand how societies rise and fall, okay? The first important principle I want you to remember is societies are fluid and dynamic. They're always changing over time, okay? They're never still. Second thing is that diversity within societies is greater than across societies. So another way of saying this is, yes, there's a conflict between the United States and China. But actually, if you actually look at differences in diversity, the difference in diversity within China is greater than the difference between China and the United States. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. And the third law is communities exist in opposition to each other. Okay, so think about the cities in China. Okay, Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Chengdu, Xi'an, they're all different. Why? Because they want to be different from each other, okay? But also within Beijing, you have Haidian, Chaoyang, Xicheng, different districts, right? They're all different from each other because they want to be different, okay? So these 3 laws will help us better understand how societies form, thrive, and ultimately die. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go over some books to highlight certain issues that we discuss in this class. This is a Dot Everything. by David Graeber and David Wengrow, who are both anthropologists. Okay? And they've looked at different societies. And what they emphasize is diversity and the dynamism of different societies. Okay? So let's look at one particular society, which is the native people of the Canadian Northwest Coast. Okay? These are the native people. And what happens, what's really interesting is throughout the year, they have different social structures. So during the winter, everyone comes together and they form a hierarchy where there are palaces, where there's an aristocracy, and where they're divided into different classes. Okay? But then what's really interesting is that during the summer, people will just go away and start new societies. Okay? This is like really interesting how in different times of the year, when the needs are different, people will choose different social organizations. Okay? People actually adopted different names in summer and winter, literally becoming someone else depending on the time of year. Okay, so a metaphor that you can think of is, think about how when you play World of Warcraft or a different video game, you adopt a different identity, you adopt a different persona. And that's fun for you. Okay, so what's common in the ancient past is for people to adopt different social structures. And they can choose what social structure to go to. Okay? And certain communities still practice it today. Okay, this is The Wayfinders by Wade Davis, one of the best books I've ever written. I've ever read. He is looking at also primitive communities, native tribes throughout the world, okay? And he's looking at specifically the Amazon people. Okay? If you go to the Amazon, you'll have many different indigenous tribes. Okay? So let's look at the religion. And as you can understand, and one thing that I will show you is that even though these people look simple, like, you know, they wear the same clothes and their life looks very simple, spiritually, they're very complex people. And they're very complex and sophisticated mythology, okay? So these are called people of the Anaconda, okay? In the beginning, before the creation of seasons, before the ancestral mother, Wemikuma, woman shaman, opened her womb, before her blood and breast milk gave rise to rivers and her ribs to the mountain ridges of the world, there was only chaos in the universe, okay? So there's this very complex mythology. I'm not gonna go through all of it, okay? But I will show you the picture of it. This is a universe that they've created from themselves. It is complete, it is unified, it's very complicated. And that's true for all mythologies. One thing that's really important for them is to maintain balance and harmony in the world, okay? So, like most primitive people, they believe there are different dimensions. And their role is to maintain harmony across these dimensions because that was what guaranteed a happy and prosperous life, okay? So let's read this together. The people living today in the forests of the Parapania, which is the Amazon, the entire natural world is saturated with meaning and cosmological significance. Every rock and waterfall embodies a story. Plants and animals are but distinct physical manifestations of the same essential spiritual essence. Okay? So every plant, every rock has a life force. And they appreciate the diversity, the complexity, the sophistication of different life forces, okay? So even though they can express themselves, they don't have a written language, their minds are extremely vibrant and dynamic and energetic. At the same time, everything is more than it appears, for the visible world is only one level of perception. Behind every tangible form, every plant and animal is a shadow dimension, a place invisible to ordinary people, but visible to the shaman. This is the realm of the He spirits, a world of deified ancestors where rocks and rivers are alive, plants and animals are human beings, sap and blood, the bodily fluids of the primary river of the Anaconda. Hidden in cataracts, behind the physical veil of waterfalls, in the very center of stones, are the great molecules of the He spirit, where everything is beautiful, the shining feathers, the coca, the calabash of tobacco, powdered, which is itself the skull and brain of the sun. Okay? You can see how the mythology is very complex and how they embedded into their everyday life. Every day when they wake up and they see the world, they see a world of color, of energy, of change. Okay? All right. He continues, among the Brahmana, such renewal is the fundamental obligation of the living. In practice, this implies the Brahmana see the earth as potent, the forest as being alive with spiritual beings and ancestral powers. To live off the land is to embrace both its creative and destructive potential. Human beings, plants, and animals share the same cosmic origins and in a profound sense are seen as essentially identical, responsive to the same principles, obligated by the same duties, responsible for the collective well-being of creation. There's no separation between nature and culture. Without the forests and rivers, humans would perish. But without people, the natural world would have no order or meaning. All would be chaos. Thus, the norms that drive social behavior also define the manner in which human beings interact with the wild, the plants and animals, the multiple phenomenon of the natural world, lightning and thunder, the sun and the moon, the scent of a blossom, the sour order of death. Everything is related, everything connected, a single integrated whole. Mythology infuses land and life with meaning, encoding expectations and behaviors essential to survival in the forest, anchoring each community, each malaka, to a profound spirit of place. Okay? So you can see how sophisticated their imagination is. Okay, so one thing that I discuss continuously, because it's a very important concept, is how everything is a harmonious whole. And so when you kill something, you first need permission. You need to have a contract, okay? This is true through most of human history. So these people are no different. When men go to the forest to hunt or fish, it is never a trivial passage. First, a shaman must travel in trance to negotiate with the masters of the animals, forging a mystical contract with the spirit guardians, an exchange based always on reciprocity. Okay? They have reciprocity. If you kill an animal, you need permission. Now, if you kill the animal, you must thank the animal through ritual sacrifice. Okay? The Brahmana compare it to marriage for hunting too as a form of courtship in which one seeks the blessings of a greater authority for the honor of taking into one's family a precious being. Meat is not the right of a hunter, but a gift from the spirit world. To kill without permission is to risk death by a spirit guardian, by it in the form of a jaguar, anaconda, tapir, or harpy eagle, okay? So the concept here is karma, right? If you do evil, evil will come to you. Okay, so it's important to maintain harmony. All right, and this is no different from the cave paintings. Okay, so you go way back to the dawn of humanity, we believe the same thing. Okay, we believe that these animals came from the spirit world. And that's why you paint it. That's why you express art, to thank the animals for coming from the spirit world to feed and nourish us. And after we kill them, then we pray that they return to us. Okay? And this goes back, tens of thousands of years.